All right, hello there. Today we come to you from Arlington, Texas, which is basically Dallas, Texas, Dallas DFW area. We arrived last evening around 5:30 p.m. after departing New Orleans at around 7 a.m. We traveled 543 miles from New Orleans to Dallas, traveling through basically the bayous of western Louisiana, taking I-10 through Baton Rouge and Lafayette until swinging a right and heading north on Route 49. That took us all the way up towards Nacogdoches and Shreveport. And then we swung a left onto Route 20, where we started heading west on into Dallas. It was a beautiful ride. I had to stop once for a long call that I needed to be looking at the screens for. But we had some significant traffic getting out of New Orleans, but it was pretty smooth sailing once we hit Dallas, where we hit Dallas right around rush hour. But overall, it was still a good ride relative to Dallas traffic. We got through it pretty quick. So I showed you earlier my Blue Tiger Elite Ultra headset the other day, which I'm wearing right now, and it's an amazing technology. And as I mentioned, it's a Bluetooth headset, which has a noise canceling feature to get rid of all the road noise so I can actually handle calls in a productive manner. It's the preferred headset used by many, many truck drivers, and it has 60 hours of talk time and 1,200 hours of standby time. So that's very significant, much better than the AirPods and things that you just stick in your ears. Of course, it looks like I'm flying a 747, but it's enabled me to have very productive conversations. With my team and to be on conference calls as need be. So, fuel, we took on 49.1 gallons of diesel after leaving New Orleans with a bit more than 3/4 of a tank when we left. And as we move further west, I'm really starting to see the diesel prices lessen. And it will be even cheaper in Texas and Oklahoma based on my past experience. So we paid $5.08 per gallon, and this was before my TSD discount. So I'm hoping that number gets somewhere around $4.80 per gallon before it's all over. We had a big midterm election day, and I'm just going to focus on the results as it relates to the legislation relative to cannabis. But so let's check in on what's happened in those 5 states that we talked about that had cannabis legislation on its ballot. Remember, those 5 states were Arkansas, Maryland, Missouri, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So the theme was 2 out of 5 ain't bad. 2 out of 5 is where we ended up. Voters in Arkansas, North Dakota, and South Dakota, they had other ideas for the approval of cannabis, and they turned it down. Those measures were shot down to the tune of about 56% opposition in Arkansas, 55% opposition in North Dakota, 53% opposition in South Dakota. And that was as of yesterday around 9 a.m., according to the unofficial election results, but strong enough where we're not going to see them pass. Now, Maryland voters overwhelmingly approved a referendum to approve marijuana of cannabis legalization by 65.4% to 34.6% margin. While significant, it is the second highest margin of approval for cannabis legalization ballot measure, trailing only New Jersey. And New Jersey was 67% approval to 33%, and that was back in 2020. So, under the initiative in Maryland, question 4 on the ballot, adults 21 and older will be allowed to possess, smoke, and grow marijuana in Maryland. July 1st, 2023, starting on that day, the ballot initiative will legalize personal possession of up to 1.5 ounces of marijuana for adults 21 and older. Possession of more than 1.5 ounces, but less than 2.5 ounces, will thereafter be punishable by a civil fine of up to $250. Possession of more than 2.5 ounces will be punishable by up to 6 months in jail or a fine of up to $1,000. So until July, marijuana remains illegal but decriminalized. So currently, possession of up to 10 grams of marijuana carries a $100 civil fine. Decriminalization will be expanded up from 1.5 ounces from January 1 to June 30th of next year. So the initiative will allow adults to grow up to 2 cannabis plants in their home out of public view starting in July 1st. Lawmakers have not yet established a framework for retail sales to begin. That's probably will be discussed at the next General Assembly session, which will be in January. So selling marijuana without proper licensing will remain illegal under the new law, classified as a misdemeanor and punishable by up to 3 years or a fine of $5,000. Smoking marijuana in public will be punishable by up to $250. The companion bill passed in the spring included a provision to automatically expunge all cases in which possession of cannabis was the only charge. The provision also allows individuals incarcerated for cannabis possession to petition for resentencing. So that's Maryland. Missouri. So medical use was legalized in 2018 in Missouri through a ballot initiative to amend the state constitution. So the first licensed sales began in 2020, but what the new law will do is adults 21 and older will be able to purchase and possess up to 3 ounces of cannabis. They can also grow up to 6 flowering marijuana plants, 6 immature plants, and 6 clones if they obtain a registration card with the state. The initiative will impose a 6% tax on recreational cannabis sales and use revenue to facilitate automatic expungements for people with certain non-violent marijuana offenses on their records. Remaining revenue will then go towards veterans' health care, substance misuse treatment, and the state's public defender system. The Department of Health and Senior Services will be responsible for regulating the program and issuing licenses for cannabis businesses. Regulators will be required to issue at least 144 micro business licenses through a lottery system, with priority given to low-income applicants and people who have been disproportionately impacted by drug criminalization. Existing medical marijuana dispensaries will also be first in line to start serving adult consumers with dual licenses. Regulators can create rules around advertising, but they cannot be any more stringent than existing restrictions on alcohol marketing. Public consumption, driving under the influence of cannabis, and underage marijuana use will be explicitly prohibited. A seed to sale tracking system will be established for the marijuana market in Missouri, and local jurisdictions will be able to opt out of permitting cannabis micro businesses or retailers from operating in their area if voters approve the ban at the ballot. The measure will further codify employment protections also for medical cannabis patients. Medical marijuana cards will be valid for 3 years at a time instead of 1, and caregivers will be able to serve double the number of patients. So that's the update on the midterms. I'm going to be giving an update probably tomorrow or the day after on Texas, because there's some interesting things going on in the state of Texas, particularly as it relates to some of the towns in Texas. So meanwhile, just a brief tour of this KOA. We're staying in Arlington, although not kind of the big city campground that we were at in New Orleans. We are in sort of a very metropolitan area and not out in the middle of nowhere. So it's really neat. You're going across all these stores and buildings, and then all of a sudden, here comes the KOA, as you saw in the intro. But here's a little bit of coverage from the KOA area. So that's it. The KOA here in Arlington, Texas. Beautiful area outside of Dallas. We're going to be looking at some of the other scenes today and getting a bunch more work done here at the campground. But in the meantime, thanks again for joining us. We're going to be traveling out tomorrow. We're going to be heading out to Amarillo, Texas, as we start making our trek northwest, as we start to then hang a left out of Amarillo and heading further out west, where we'll stop in Flagstaff and then on into Lake Mead, Nevada, and then on into Las Vegas. So stay tuned as the incredible adventures of Clark continue.